Good morning, everybody. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Chris Hand is off today. I know that I'm not near as handsome, nor do I have the same mellifluous voice that Chris has, but I'll try to fill in here and get you through the next 3 hours. Chris will be back tomorrow, so you don't have to wait very long for some more Chris Hand. We got Mason pushing the blinky buttons. Good morning to you, Mason.
Good morning, Brian. How you doing today?
And Joan Jones is in the newsroom after you took off on me Friday, but that's okay.
I did.
Yeah. But I'm glad to have you back in the saddle there, Joan.
Oh, thank
Everything
you.
going well?
Oh, yeah. Went down to Jacksonville to the Players Championship on Friday.
Oh, wow.
That was fun.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
I bet it was. Now, were you up with Dan last night with this weather that we had?
I was not. I was not.
Apparently we got through it okay, but I mean,
Yeah.
we did, as expected. Thousands of people lost their power. I think. Am I correct in saying my sense of it is at this hour, most of it has been restored? Correct.
Most of it has been. Now, NES has been running a little bit. They had 400 outages at one point. I'm just checking right now. It looks like NES now has 362 customers without power. So they're coming down off their highs, about 1,300 overnight. So,
wow.
they're doing
Well,
better.
I mean, it was going to happen. You have wind coming through,
Of course.
and the trees were already weakened. You're just going to lose power's going to happen. But it looks like, at least this time, from what I'm reading, NES brought on extra crews and we're ready.
Yes.
So,
How about that?
lesson learned, wouldn't
Yeah.
you say? Yeah.
You
All
would.
right. All right, let me get into what's happening in Iran. I just want to mention that the president of the United States is scheduled to have a press conference pretty soon. I don't know exactly what time it's scheduled, but we're watching that. And when the president, comes to the microphone, we will dip in and take long stretches of that because right now there's so much going on in the world. Of course, what's going on with Iran. We also domestically are in the middle of a big political fight over the Save America Act and where that's going. That's going to hopefully find its way to the floor of the Senate this week in some way, and that's going on. And this all comes amid some talk about Iran perhaps wanting to negotiate a ceasefire or an ending to the war. Here's the story that I found, NBC News. Trump says Iran is ready to negotiate a ceasefire, but he's not ready yet to make a deal. President said the terms aren't good enough yet to make a deal with Iran amid a widening war in the Middle East. So here we go, a little more of this. President Donald Trump said Saturday he's not willing to make a deal to end the war with Iran, despite the country's willingness to do so, because the terms aren't good enough yet. Declined to say what those terms would have to be. In a wide-ranging, nearly 30-minute telephone interview with NBC News, the president said he's working with other countries on plans to secure the Strait of Hormuz amid surges in global oil prices, and he dismissed American concerns about rising gas prices since the U.S. and Israel launched their joint military operation some 2 weeks ago. The president also questioned whether Iran's new supreme leader is even alive. More on that in just a moment. Let's see. Where are we? I mean, we should always stop and take a look of where we are because, what's happening in Iran seems like a long way away, but what's happening down at the gas station where you fill up your tank, that's not so far away. That's right where you live, correct? Tennessee average for a gallon of gas this morning, according to AAA, $3.34 a gallon for a gallon of gas and $4.92 for a gallon of diesel. A month ago, that would have been $2.52 for a gallon of gas and $3.34 for a gallon of diesel. In Nashville, the average is $3.34, $5.07 for diesel, and nationwide it's $3.71 on average for a gallon of gas and $4.98. And the real question is, how long is that going to be? What's going to happen? Well, here's what I will say. I think that the oil industry and the natural gas folks, the thing that drives hikes and prices is, in many cases, uncertainty. The markets don't like uncertainty. Now, I don't think it's going to be very long before these prices come down, But as long as there's still chaos, and as long as Iran has effectively kept the Strait of Hormuz closed, then you're going to see these prices up. The same thing would happen if you were in the Gulf of Mexico and you had a hurricane and they had to shut down all the Gulf rigs, and maybe you had a refinery that got hit. That would jack up the prices in the very same way. And when you're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, you're talking about, 20% of the world's oil and natural gas supply goes through that little 30-mile gap that the Iranians still have some control over. Now, the president's trying to deal with that, and let's see what we can find out about that. Let me come back to the stuff about White House tries to build coalition on Iran to address the energy crisis. Wall Street Journal. The White House declined to comment on the expected announcement, which could shift depending on battlefield conditions. Trump told reporters Sunday that the administration has reached out to 7 nations for help policing the strait, but declined to say whether any had agreed to assist. We will remember, he says, publicly many countries have been non-committal to such an escort mission until hostilities cease, given the risks involved, including Iran's placement of mines in the strait. The pressure for the White House to announce such a coalition underscores the dilemma facing the administration. Gasoline prices continue to rise. Questions swirl from within the Republican Party as to the end game. Come on. This just irritates me. The end game, we barely got started. And here's what I would say about the end game. The end game will come when it's over, when we have achieved our set out accomplishments, but I don't think we're talking about a long-term thing. I just don't. In a joint statement on Sunday, the foreign minister of the UK and members of the Gulf Cooperation Council said the GCC states have the right to take all necessary measures to defend their security and stability and protect territory, citizens, and residents. So here we go. Here's why I think we're not ready to have any kind of settlement with the Iranians. The Iranians are still under the mistaken belief that they can set the terms here. Here is the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. That's Abbas Araghchi.
Our nuclear facilities were attacked, and everything is under the rubble. But for the time being, we have no program, we have no plan to recover them from under the rubble.
Are you willing to give that up now?
Well, there is nothing on the table right now. Everything depends on the future. If any time in the future we decide to enter into negotiation with the U.S. or other interlocutors, we may decide what to put on the table. For the time being, nothing is on the table.
Nothing's on the table. Well, I don't know what they think the outcome's going to be here. They're not in a position to do much in the way of negotiating. They're really not. And Energy Secretary Chris Wright says, hang on, I know these are tough times, and I know it costs you a lot to fill up your tank, and you're worried about that. He said, but we're on it. We are doing everything we can to bring back down the price of gasoline and or diesel.
I would pay no attention to what Iran says, but there is a lot of energy that flows through the Straits of Hormuz. And depending upon the timing and the manner in which this conflict comes to an end, we're going to see some elevated pricing until we get there. Where it's going to go, we have done many, many actions to mitigate that price rise. You saw the announcement of a coordinated release of 400 million barrels of oil, with over 30 nations of the world participating in that. We've had allies in the Middle East that moved oil overseas before the conflict started. Heck, we just announced yesterday bringing on a meaningful amount of oil production in the state of California from offshore, that California has fought foolishly to prevent new American oil to go into their own state. And we said enough is enough, and we've got new oil production coming on in California. So lots of actions we're taking to mitigate this price rise.
Well, will they be able to bring it down? It's going to be tough. I mean, they can keep it from going much higher. We're nowhere near where we were, back during the Biden days when, in some places in the country, gas was $5 and $6 a gallon. We're not there. But the bottom line is, it's still expensive. If you have to fill up your tank, it's going to cost you, you know, an arm and a leg, and that's just the way it is. Again, here's what I would say. Yeah, it's irritating, and yeah, it bothers me, and yes, we got a break for a while, and we should be grateful for that, and I think the prices will eventually come back down. But, you know, we have to be willing, I think, as Americans, to take the short-term hit for the longer-term gain. I mean, if we were taking the hit and we thought it's never going to change, it's always going to be this bad, then I say, well, you know, I don't know why we're doing it. But here's the bottom line. Once we get control of the Strait of Hormuz and once we bop the Iranians on the nose for the bullies that they are on the world stage, and once we get them sort of defanged, there will be a lot of calmness in that region that we have not had in quite a while. They are the number one sponsorer of terrorism around the world, especially in that particular part of the world. They have regional aspirations beyond the borders of Iran. And so if you defang them, if you shut down their ability to continue to fight wars with their various proxies, then, you know, we're going to have stability in the region, and that brings lower oil and gas prices over time. So, yeah, you know, you take the hit. Sometimes you got to make an investment in order to get the payoff, and that's what we're doing now. Yes, it's ugly. Yes, I know it's troublesome. I really, look, if you're worried that this is going to be the way it is for a while, here's what I would say to you. Do you think Donald Trump is stupid? I mean, you may not like him, but he's not a dumb man. He knows what's on the horizon. What's on the horizon is the midterm elections. And I promise you, he does not want to be where we are right now as we get closer to the midterm elections. We got a lot of time. 6 months in the world of politics is a lifetime. There's going to be a time for him to clean this up, and I think, you know, still get something done perhaps in Cuba long before we get to the midterm elections. There will be a period of quiet and peace and prosperity, and all of the things that the big, beautiful bill are going to do are all going to fall into line, and everything's going to be okay by about June or July. And that gives us a lot of time to sort of settle, catch our breath, get ready for the midterm elections, and do the very best that we can. And yes, it's entirely possible that Republicans will lose either the House or the Senate. The way it looks to me, I'll be honest, I think we're in pretty good shape to keep the Senate. I'm not so sure that we'll be able to hold the House. It's a closer question. But that was always the possibility. When you look at the history of midterm elections, the party in power generally does not do well. The only thing that changes that is prosperity and people who feel, if they feel like the economy is working for them. Now, here's the thing. In politics, you have reality and you have perception. I think the reality is the economy is getting stronger. This little bump in gas prices is hurting, and I'll admit it. I'll be the first to admit it, but I don't think it's going to be that way very long. But other things in the economy are starting to really come together. People are about to get their big tax income. I mean, tax refunds. If you've done your taxes, you know, chances are you're going to get a refund that you weren't anticipating. And that money's going to be in people's pockets, and they're going to be starting to spend that. And that's good for the economy. That's a very good thing. So, you know, June, July, all of that will start to be happening. And at the end of the day, I think that's good for us because I think that, you know, we will have prosperity. We'll have a period of quiet. We can look back and say we took care of our enemies on the world stage. We brought we brought Cuba into the island nation, into the friendly nations of the world. There's some reporting on that I can share with you in a bit about where we are with regard to Cuba. It's beginning to sound like things are very positive there. And we're going to have shut down the narco-terrorists. We're going to have shut down the flow of fentanyl. We're going to have shut down and changed the things in the region with regard to Venezuela. And it's all going to come together. But we got these nervous Nellies out there who are just freaking out, and they just need to take a chill pill and relax for a little bit. It's going to be okay. It's going to be all right politically as we go forward here. It just takes a little time. But I know that Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and the President of the United States are all looking at this situation with an understanding not only of what we need to do to bring peace to the world, what we need to do to make the world more secure, but also, getting it all done in a time frame that doesn't hurt us in the midterm elections. To my friends in Washington who are nervous about the midterms, I would simply say, have a little trust. They didn't go into this thing without a plan. There is a plan, and I see that it working in a way that really is in the long-term interest of this nation and of this world. It's going to be a safer place on this planet, and it's going to be all the things that they're trying to accomplish are well within the national security concerns of this country. Every single thing he's doing makes us safer from a national security standpoint. Have a little faith and have a little trust. And to those say, well, I don't trust Donald Trump. Well, here's what I would say to you. Donald Trump goes out and does something. He tells you what he's going to do, and he's going to do it. And I think in the last presidential election, he got a mandate to go out and do the things that he's doing. And how many times have you doubted Donald Trump? And at the end of the day, you have to say, well, he was right. He was right about that. He was right about a lot of stuff. And I think he's right about what we're doing now on the world stage. And I think he's getting great advice from Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I think all of this is going to be just fine. Have a little faith. 23 minutes now past the hour of 9 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
Good morning. It's 9:30, and I'm Joan Jones with your top stories. Well, they're cleaning up in Bonnertown, Lawrence County this morning after a suspected tornado touchdown. The National Weather Service is headed to that area today to determine if it was a tornado or perhaps straight line winds. Amazingly, nobody was seriously hurt.
Officials say there is significant tree damage along Tennessee Route 98. We know one person was trapped under a tree on Bonnertown Road. That person was not hurt. However, other minor injuries were reported across the county.
This Channel 4's Marius Payton. 10 homes were either damaged or destroyed during those storms last night. Storm damage has also been reported in Murray County. In Cookeville, a pedestrian died Sunday morning after being struck by a vehicle along I-40 in Putnam County. Now, this happened just after 8 o'clock yesterday morning. Tennessee Highway Patrol said the pedestrian had been walking partially in the right lane when he was hit by a Toyota Camry. THP says it's still investigating, but charges against the 66-year-old driver are pending. There's an apparent connection between the Detroit area synagogue attack of last week and a Mideast militant group.
The brother of a man who attacked Temple, Israel near Detroit Thursday, who was killed earlier this month in an Israeli airstrike, was a Hezbollah commander, says Israel's military. Ibrahim Ghazali was killed in Lebanon along with 3 other of the attacker's relatives on March 5th. That's a week before police say Ayman Mohammed Ghazali drove his car into the synagogue and killed himself after security fired at him. The FBI's Detroit office, which is investigating the synagogue attack, declined to comment on the Israeli claims.
That is ABC's Chuck Sievertson reporting. And that's the latest news. We've got your weather ahead. I'm Joan Jones, WTN News.
Hey, this is Pastor Al, and join us on Super Talk 99.7, Sunday evenings from 7 to 8. We're going to look at the news from a biblical perspective.
Did you see this lunatic?
What's wrong with me? Oh, right. Hey, smile for the camera, you little Nazi
That's
bitch!
enough.
Kill all Nazis! We want World War II! Fuck you! kill Nazis!
So that is a crazed leftist yelling at a Republican and calling him Nazis. When will the Democrats understand calling Republicans Nazis is anti-Semitic? Because when you do that, what you're doing is sanitizing what Adolf Hitler and the Nazis did. That, my friends, is anti-Semitic.
Kill all Nazis! We won World War II! Fuck you! Kill all Nazis!
It is 35 minutes now past the hour of 9 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Brian Wilson in for Chris And. He will return to his rightful position tomorrow, so there is that. In the meantime, got a lot going on. Want to mention just a programming note. If you're interested in what's going on in Iran, if you're interested in what's going on with the Save America Act and so many other things happening right now, the President of the United States is anticipated to have a news conference here in a few minutes. And when that happens, we'll try to carry as much of it as we possibly can because, there's just so much going on, so important. Let's be ready for that. So we're watching that, monitoring. Mason has got his evil eye there on the monitor. Oh, it's not an evil eye, it's just an eye. He's going to be watching the monitor, and when it gets time for that, we will go directly to the President of the United States. Talking about the situation in Iran in the last half hour, have some additional stuff I'd like to get into the record about that, and that is what's going on with the alleged new leader of Iran. Trump demands that Iran surrender, but says he's hearing that the new leader may not be alive. This has happened. There's a lot of evidence out there that suggests that he is injured or perhaps not even alive, but one way or the other, he is purported to be the leader. We'll see what happens there. But listen to this. This comes from CBS News. Everybody goes, well, you roll your eyes. CBS News, Brian, really? I just need to bring you up to speed on something. CBS News is changing. They got a new boss over there by the name of Barry Weiss. And what I'm starting to see now, at least in their print version, is that they're covering things that they probably would not have covered before. So listen to this. U.S. intelligence shows Iran's late supreme leader was wary of his son taking power, this according to sources. U.S. intelligence has circulated to President Trump and to a small circle around him that Iran's late supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had misgivings about his son replacing him. Multiple sources within the matter have told CBS News. The analysis showed the elder Khamenei was wary of his son, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, ever taking power because he was perceived as not very bright and viewed as unqualified to be leader, this according to sources. The information gathered also indicated the father was aware that his son had issues in his personal life, according to sources within the administration, the intelligence community, and people close to the president. Mojtaba Khamenei, 56, elected to become Iran's supreme leader last weekend by the country's Council of Religious Clerics after serving as a close aide to his father for years. But 8 days earlier, Ali Khamenei was killed in an Israeli missile attack in the opening salvo of the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran. Mojtaba was believed to have been injured in that strike, has been reported to have remained in his father's inner circle. Mr. Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, other senior officials have been briefed on the intelligence about the younger Khamenei In private conversations, Mr. Trump has told people close to him that he doesn't know that the information conveyed to him about about Mojtaba Khamenei matters. He thinks Iran is essentially leaderless right now, and that the younger Khamenei is possibly dead. The White House believes, this is really good and in-depth reporting, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard is calling the shots, a significant change from the theocratic dictatorship that has existed in the country since the 1979 revolution. Spokespeople for the CIA, the White House, and the Vice President declined to comment publicly for this article. On Friday, Mr. Trump hinted publicly about Ali Khamenei's lack of faith in his son. Their leadership is gone. Their second leadership is gone. Now their third leadership is in trouble. And this is not somebody that the father even wanted, Trump told Fox News in an interview. Mr. Trump has called the new supreme leader a lightweight who would be an unacceptable leader for Iran. He has also suggested he wanted some oversight over Iran's next leader. The federal government, then the pressure stays on, has offered $10 million for information on the exact location of Mojtaba Khamenei and 9 other key Iranian officials. Now, there is that. Now, did you hear this line in here about, well, you know, in the briefing that he's got some kind of personal issues? What is that all about? Well, maybe this is it. You ready? NewYorkPost.com. President Trump was stunned to learn last week that U.S. intelligence indicates the new Iranian Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, may be gay, and that his father, the late Ayatollah Khamenei, feared his suitability to rule the Islamic Republic for that reason, the Post can reveal. Trump couldn't contain his surprise and laughed out loud when he was briefed on the intel, according to sources. Others in the room found it hilarious and joined the president's reaction. One senior intelligence official has not stopped laughing about it for days, and one person familiar with the briefing. The shocking claim was described to the Post by 2 intelligence community officials and a third person close to the White House. All 3 sources say the implausible-sounding allegation is viewed as credible by U.S. spy agencies rather than false information intended to undermine Khamenei, 56, who was selected to replace his dad on March 8th. 2 of the sources said the intelligence who indicated that Mojtaba, who earned the nickname the power behind the robes while serving as his aging dad's gatekeeper, has had a long-term sexual relationship with his childhood tutor. The third source says the intelligence indicated the affair was with the person who formerly worked with the Khamenei family. He's, again, believed, according to this report, to have been wounded in the same February 28th airstrike that killed his father and other members of the family. Has made aggressive sexual overtures to men caring for him, possibly while under the influence of heavy medication, says one of the Post sources. They do not have photographic evidence, but the sources insisted the tip is solid, with one saying it was derived from one of the most protected sources that government has. The fact that this was elevated to the highest of high levels show you there's some confidence in this, added a second source. His sexual orientation has been whispered about inside Iran since at least May of 24 helicopter crash that killed then-President Ibrahim Raisi, Ali Khamenei's presumed favorite to be the next supreme leader, sources say. Within the government's been pretty close-held piece of information. How about that? Some elements of Mojtaba Khamenei's sex life have been reported before, and that may lend credence to the allegation. A classified U.S. diplomatic cable from 2008, published by WikiLeaks, described Mojtaba as being treated in the U.K. for impotence. State Department files said Mojtaba married relatively late in life, around age 30. He was expected by the family to produce children quickly, but apparently he had problems having that happen and had to go for treatment inside the UK. How about that? Yeah, look. Isn't that rich? Especially when you consider what the situation is for people who are gay inside Iran. Doesn't go well. Here we go. I want to spend the rest of this half hour giving you some real practical knowledge. I mean, because here you are, you know, we're all facing the same problem. We got to put a gallon of gas in our car. Cost us in Nashville $3.34 on average. I went to the corner here this morning to get some coffee, and the gallon of gas was $3.39. So that's about where it is, $5 a gallon for diesel. So, you know, what you need to do is take whatever vehicle you're driving and drive it as efficiently as you possibly can. And how can you do that? Well, I'm going to give you some real life tips here on how you can stretch that gallon of gas as far as it can go. You know, I used to do this, Mason, I don't know. You remember, we've gone through these high gas prices before. You know, when I was in D.C., I had to drive about, I'd say it's about 50 miles round trip each day, about 25 miles in and about 25 miles back out to my house. So, you know, I was, and the D.C. traffic, as bad as we think it is here, D.C. traffic is, believe me, one of the worst in the world. And so the question is, how can you, well, I began this thing called hypermiling. And it basically became sort of an intellectual challenge every day. How can I stretch a gallon of gas? And basically, I got so good at it that I, you know, just in learning, like, for example, I mean, I'm doing stuff probably you shouldn't do. Like, if there's a nice downhill slope, as there is from about 270 down to the Potomac River, as you get on the Beltway, it's all sort of downhill. You're coming down a hill. I'd slip it into neutral, and I would coast and let the engine idle. I mean, should you do that? I don't know, but I did. If there was a big truck, I would pull up right behind it and let the big truck break all the air, and I'd sort of draft behind that big truck, right? Whatever it took, I was going to do everything that I could and I got where I could basically get to town on about a gallon of gas, about 50 miles to the gallon. So there are things you can do, and some of them have big payoffs. Are you ready? 7 tips, according to the Associated Press, come from experts if you want to save on gas while you're driving. Stick to 65 miles an hour on the highway. Today's cars, by and large, are geared to be most efficient at that speed, and you lose quite a bit of fuel once you go faster than 65 miles an hour. By some estimates, slowing down and just driving the speed limit can increase your gas mileage by as much as 14%. You know, I don't know whether in Middle Tennessee whether we're going to do that, because you know what I'm seeing is a lot of people are driving about 80 miles an hour. It's the unofficial speed limit. Oh, yeah, 70 in some area, but I mean, nobody drives 70. If you drive 70, you're getting run over. But if you can drive around 65 miles an hour, that's sort of where most cars are dialed in to be most fuel efficient. If you're having a hard time do that, the experts say, use your cruise control. Set your cruise control and then leave it alone. This maintains a set vehicle speed, cuts the need to press on the gas pedal, avoids fluctuations like jerky acceleration or hard braking. Experts also recommend coasting to stoplights. You see a stoplight, don't run up there and then slam on your brakes. Ease up to that red light as slow as you can. Because, you know, maybe by the time you get there, if you ease up, it will be green and you don't have to come to a complete stop, and that's fuel efficient. Oh, and this is one that's going to be very controversial. You ready? Many modern vehicles have a thing where if you come to a stop sign, the engine will turn off temporarily until you get your foot off the brake, then the engine starts and you can go forward. I don't like it. You know, it's just I don't like it. I've never liked it, and so I generally turn that off. They say it really makes a difference if you leave it on. The automatic stop-start ignition restarts once the accelerator is pressed. If you're stuck in traffic and you see it's bumper to bumper for a while and you have start-stop, don't turn that off. Allow the engine to turn on and off as it is needed. That's especially true when drivers do not need to blast air conditioning while waiting for long periods of time. If you have a roof rack, it might make sense to take it off. Many drivers have roof racks on top of their vehicles or bike racks on the back. It takes extra fuel to push that structure through the air, and experts have found it can cost several miles per gallon. If you're not actually using those devices, it's like dragging a parachute behind your car. Any other type of accessory that basically causes drag, you want to lose those. If you're carrying heavy items in your backseat, trunk, or trunk bed, and you don't need them, leave them at home. Here's another one. Tires that are properly inflated, based on what the vehicle manual recommends. Checking tire pressure every other fill-up is one suggestion. Lower inflated tires will increase resistance on the road, so properly inflated, the vehicle is going to drive a bit smoother and be able to accelerate properly. Expect an impact on gas mileage by as much as 10% if you get the tires right. If you're finding you're not getting what you're supposed to get, maybe you need to go to a mechanic. They might replace the air filter or oxygen sensors that tell the engine how to make the fuel mixture. Another idea, and I don't know if people are ready for this, but carpooling, of course, that's a way to effectively split the cost with somebody else. You got somebody going the same direction you're going, share the ride. Then you get in the HOV lanes, by the way. Be more thoughtful in planning and organizing your driving to make fewer trips overall. Don't make unnecessary stops. Don't drive all the way across town just to save $1 on eggs. Plan your trips. Don't drive if you don't have to. Don't get premium gas unless your car specifically requires it. That makes a lot of sense. And you can get a Gas Buddy app to find the cheapest gasoline in your area. It goes on to suggest the average age for a vehicle on the road today is about 12 years old, but the newer ones are getting more fuel efficient than the old ones. And if you're going to go forward and this is a big issue for you, then an electric vehicle may be the answer, or I think the real solution has always been the hybrids. The hybrids are where we're headed. Most people, I think, in the future will be driving hybrids. A little bit of gas, but mostly electric, gets you a long way down the road. The new hybrids that are coming up through development now will have a range of 500 miles, which ain't shabby. It is 52 minutes now past the hour of 9 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
a barricade. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock, and I'm Joan Jones with your top stories. A suspect has surrendered to Metro Nashville police after an hours-long standoff. Police accuse that man of firing on officers who had been responding to another call in East Nashville about 5:30 this morning. That suspect barricaded himself in an apartment at the James Casey Homes. Some roads there had been blocked off to traffic during the standoff. They have now been reopened. In Lawrence County, the cleanup is underway from what may have been a tornado. Fox 17's Chris Knowles reporting from Bonnertown, where 10 homes, many of them double-wide trailers, were destroyed in last night's storms.
This is only one part of it. And so we walked around to look to see where the other half is at. And it's actually on the other side of a pond over there. That shows you how powerful the winds were last night.
The National Weather Service will be on the scene today. They'll determine whether that was a tornado or perhaps straight line winds. An investigation underway at Timms Ford Lake after a drowning. The sheriff's office said deputies were dispatched to Devil's Step boat ramp about 3:30 yesterday afternoon for reports of a drowning. They have not released the identity of that person. President Trump is warning NATO members to get off their duffs and help out in the Strait of Hormuz.
Trump is trying to pressure world powers, including the UK, France and Italy, to help keep the Strait of Hormuz open as oil prices skyrocket. This after Australia and Japan already refused his request. The president won't give specifics on which countries might sign on. But the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil travels, is now a no-go zone for shipping, with the constant threat of Iranian drone and missile attacks.
That is ABC's Ian Pannell reporting. Reports say that the president is considering postponing his trip to China, scheduled for later this month. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that rumors about why he may postpone are not true.
If the president's visit, and I'm saying if the president's visit is postponed, it would have nothing to do with the Chinese making a commitment to the Straits of Hormuz.
Also, ABC News is reporting that the Pentagon is deploying 2,200 Marines to that region on board 3 Navy ships. Well, this afternoon, President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance are formally launching their anti-fraud task force. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt speaking to Fox News about it this morning.
We're going to turn every page to find and identify this fraud, to prosecute the individuals who are engaged in it. This will be, again, a whole-of-government effort led by the vice president, and the president will be signing that in the Oval Office this afternoon.
And she says there'll be a task force action taking place in every state of the union. That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Joan Jones, WTN News.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's 5 minutes past the hour of 10 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7, second hour of the Chris Hand Show. Brian Wilson filling in. Chris will be back tomorrow. Joan Jones in the newsroom, making sure that we're up to speed on everything going on. And Mason is pushing all the blinky buttons so effectively. Good morning to you, Mason.
Good morning.
All right, so I just want to mention that we have a news conference happening at the White House involving President Trump any minute now. And when that happens, because there's so much, that's going on around the world and so much that's going on here domestically, trying to get the SAVE Act passed and all that, that I think it's very important. We'll dip into large portions of that to get some sense of what's on the president's mind here today. As again, he will come out and give us, I think, primarily an update on where we are. There have been some signs that the Iranians might be willing to talk about some kind of surrender or ending coming up with a ceasefire. I don't get the sense that we're ready for that to happen yet. The thing about it is that the Iranians, may still be under the mistaken belief that they can have some say about how this thing's going to be resolved, but it's not. They're not. They basically they haven't yet figured out that they're no longer in charge. But we'll see how that all goes. In the meantime, let's talk about stuff happening in more closer to home. And again, we'll dip into that. The moment that the president walks to the podium, we'll be all over it like a duck on a June bug. Okay, here we go. Transportation Security Administration workers have not been paid since Friday was their first moment when they did not get a complete paycheck. So if they're working without a paycheck right now. And there's no end to the shutdown in sight the way it stands right now. Senate Democrats last week defeated a motion to proceed to a House-passed bill to reopen the Department of Homeland Security and end at that time it was a 27-day shutdown. It's more than that now. The motion failed by a vote of 51 to 46, with centrist Senator John Fetterman being the only Democrat to vote with Republicans to advance the funding bill. It needed 60 votes to advance. Marked the fourth time since February 12th that Democrats have voted to block Homeland Security funding. Vote capped a day of skirmishes on the Senate floor about how to break the funding deadlock. I don't know how long it's going to go, but it's not going yet. This is again from last week. Senate Democrats failed in a bid on Thursday to fund the Transportation Security Administration as Republicans demand lawmakers approve funding for the entire Homeland Security Department. Senate later on Thursday set to make a procedural vote for all but expected to fail. Yeah, they don't have the votes for it. And something else that they're struggling with, and we've talked about it endlessly, something that 85% of Americans want, the Save America Act. Basically a voter ID. So you have to show some form of voter ID when you show up to do something that's probably the most important things that we do as citizens in this country, cast your ballot. But it's a fight. It's a fight to the end. Politico. John Thune preparing to rip off the Band-Aid. Starting with a procedural vote as early as Tuesday tomorrow, the Senate Majority Leader will kick off what could be 2 weeks of debate on the elections overhaul known as the Save America Act. The bill is likely doomed thanks to bipartisan opposition and the GOP's conference desire to protect the filibuster. With Save's fate all but sealed, the coming days will put Republicans to the test as they try to pass what President Donald Trump said should be their number one priority. Adding to the chaos, some of the bill's most outspoken champions in the House GOP are warning that a failed attempt won't be enough to keep them satisfied, and they're ready to block any Senate legislation outside of DHS funding. So here's what is to expect going forward, according to Politico. Thune will kick off things as soon as Tuesday with the vote that requires only a simple majority to open debate. At least one Republican, Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, is planning to oppose the move, but Thune will likely have the votes to proceed. Potential opponents of the bill know it will ultimately be blocked when the Senate moves to end debate something that will require 60 votes. Tillis told Politico, and I believe he's correct, there is no path for success. I was a no on the talking filibuster path, and this one's going to produce the same result. Other Republicans to watch are, you ready for this? Here are your problems. Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Murkowski last week declined to say how she would vote and said she needed more clarity on the mechanics of the debate. So there you have that from Politico. Here we... Let's see. Trump allies plan Senate floor takeover to pass the Save America Act from thehill.com. President Trump's allies planning to take over Senate floor this week in a bid to pass the Save America Act, setting up a major test for Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who's under pressure from Trump and the MAGA base to extend the debate over voting reform as long as possible. GOP senators are playing their cards close to the vest ahead of this week's marathon debate over the Safeguard America voter eligibility, the Save America Act, which would require people registering to vote to show documented proof of citizenship. They're bracing for long hours and possible late nights in a bid to build momentum for the bill, which already has broad public support. A recent Harvard Caps Harris poll of 1,900 registered voters found that 71% support the Save America Act. And I've seen polls that suggest it may be as high as 85%. Trump allies frustrated that they aren't able to force Democrats to stage a so-called talking filibuster to block the bill, are pressing Thune to keep the measure on the floor as long as possible to force Democrats to defend their opposition. How long it's going to go to be instructive, because the point of this is exhausting the Democrats. The point of it is pain, and the point of it is forcing a public and political process and seeing what comes out of it, a Republican strategist who favors a showdown with the Democrats over the legislation. Senator Mike Lee, leading proponent of the bill, says Trump wants to see Republicans go all out and envision an epic fight like the 2-month battle that preceded the Senate's passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. What I want is try to get to maximize the period of time in which we debate. Lee recalled that during the battle over the 64 Civil Rights Act, the Senate stayed in session for 60 days and used an approach that is similar to what we ought to do here. They faced a 32-vote cloture deficit at the time it came over from the House in March of 64, Lee says, and they were able to close a 32-vote cloture deficit. It took them 60 days, but they got there. Defeating a bill that continues to get more popular, even as people are trying to slow it down and stop it and obstruct it, is sometimes sharpens the minds of individual lawmakers and make them more amenable in the end to negotiation, and that's what we're looking for here. Katie Britt, Republican of Alabama, said Republicans are still working through their floor strategy, but are preparing for a battle. Asked if Republicans would hold the floor for quite a while, Britt declared, heck yeah. It usually requires 60 votes to begin debate on a bill, but Thune has found an easier way to get the measure to the floor to give Lee and other Trump allies a chance to have an open-ended debate on the measure. Thune has planned the vote on a motion to proceed to Save Act so that it will be considered as a message from the House, allowing Republicans to get on the bill with a simple majority vote. It's a big concession to conservative colleagues. So there you go. See how that's going on. The other thing happening, of course, in Washington is that the Democrats are all up in arms about what's going on with Iran. It's shocking that that is the case. There's only one Democrat, only one, who believes that we're doing the right thing with Iran, and that would be John Fetterman. Boy, I tell you, has my opinion about Fetterman changed over the last couple of years. You know, why people wonder, why is he doing this? Well, I think John Fetterman was a pretty good student of Joe Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, no longer in the Senate, But he was a sort of a guy that, you know, that the Republicans could count on sometimes. And, you know, what Manchin knew and what Fetterman, I think, has learned is if you want to be a real power broker in the United States Senate, it's not to be on the left or to be on the right, but to be in the middle. That's how you get a lot of what you want. Okay, so this time I need this, and so I'm going to work with the Republicans on this, and they'll help me out when it comes time for my thing. Sometimes I'm going to work with the Democrats, and they need my vote, so they're going to work with me, and I'll get the thing that I need from them. You have a lot of power if you're in the center, and that was what Joe Manchin knew and what Fetterman has learned as well. Fetterman talking about how the Dems don't have it right when it comes to Iran.
Every single Democrat that I know and the last Democratic presidential candidates, they've all agreed we can never allow them to acquire a nuclear bomb. In fact, Kamala Harris identified Iran as her top international security for our nation. And now everybody kept military action on the table. Now, a good thing has happened. President Trump decided to do something about it. All the other things, multiple presidents have tried this over decades, negotiating treaties, you know, working with our allies in the region. All of these things never worked, but we actually did produce about almost 800, 900 pounds of just weapons grade uranium to make bombs. Why can't we as Democrats agree what's happened is a very, very positive development for world peace, definitely for regional peace, and now that denies Iran to build a nuclear bomb and also destroy their missile technology and their program. Why isn't that a good thing? That doesn't require for you to agree on every single thing, but I think anyone, if you're going to be fair, anyone that's going to put the country over the party, now that puts me there as the only Democrat to support this entire program now.
That's John Fetterman, Democrat from from Pennsylvania, talking about how he is going to be with the president when it comes to his Iran. Democrats are pushing for votes to force the Iran war debate. United States war with Iran entering its third week. Congress has yet to publicly test the Trump administration's case for the conflict. Republicans in Congress have so far sidestepped public debate over the war, even as Senate Democrats reach for every tool at their disposal to demand hearings with the Trump administration officials. Increasingly frustrated, Democrats are threatening this week to force a series of votes on the war, hoping that the effort to gum up the Senate's voting schedule will prod Republicans to action. We've had no oversight whatsoever over what the executive is doing, as we're spending billions of dollars a day and have failed to have any real substantive debate or discussion. The role of Congress in the deliberations is an unsettled question with enormous stakes, given that lawmakers have the power to shape the trajectory of the conflict as it grows in cost and casualty. 13 have been killed, billions of dollars spent. President Trump has not sought congressional approval for attacking Iran. As the 17th day of the conflict dawned today, Republican lawmakers remain mostly resistant to the idea of quickly forcing public testimony before Congress. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told reporters last week he didn't expect public hearings specifically on the Iran war, but noted it would inevitably come up in the regular rhythm of testimony on military possibility and policy. That's from Newsmax. The bottom line is Democrats will always, and we do it too. If Joe Biden did something that we didn't like with the military, immediately you would hear the calls, well, then we need a War Powers Act, War Powers Act, War Powers Act. Trump does something the Democrats don't like, immediately they start screaming, War Powers Act, War Powers Act, War Powers Act. This is in violation of the War Powers Act. It's not. That's a bunch of hooey. It's not. The War Powers Act gives the president the ability to run limited operations without having to ask congressional authority. And so, the War Powers Act, by the way, may not be constitutional, And there's this little game that happens in Washington with the War Powers Act. Oh, we're gonna claim that the War Powers Act has something to say about this, but when it really comes down to testing it, nobody wants to test it. Nobody really wants to know whether or not it's constitutional or not. Presidents like having the authority to run limited operations without having to ask permission first. And so presidents, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, have always liked and been able to do that. I mean, every Democrat has done it in recent history. Every president, it seems, has done it in recent history. And again, let's just come down. The War Powers Act is on the books, but it may not be constitutional, and it has never been tested in the Supreme Court. Look, I think it should be tested. I'd like to know whether or not they have the authority to do that, but they don't test it, and they never do. So, to hear the Democrats talking about, well, violation, it's not a violation. This president is doing what presidents time immemorial have done. They are running limited military operations. And if it goes beyond a certain point, yeah, you got to come and you got to declare war and you got to come in into the Congress and get the funding for it and all of that. But the War Powers Act ain't much. Everybody claims that it is, but who knows? And it needs to be tested. It truly, absolutely needs to be tested. Let's see, one other thing. I think that's probably it. Look, there's a lot of things going on. One other quick thing about happening in the swamp that I want to just leave you with, and I'll just do this briefly. Democrats in Congress are moving to censure U.S. Representative Andy Ogles after a series of anti-Muslim posts he made on social media. This is coming from Shri Thanadar, Democrat of Michigan. On Thursday, introduced a 2-page resolution to censure Ogles for writing on social media earlier this week that Muslims don't belong in American society. The measure cites other comments that Ogles has made, including a remark on a podcast that Muslims will breed their way through our society, calling them alarming and inappropriate. In addition to censuring Ogle, the resolution would remove the Tennessee Republican from the House Committee on Homeland Security. I just don't think this is going anywhere, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. We'll call it 22 minutes past the hour of 10 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
A barricade situation is over in East Nashville. What happened there early this morning? Also, a local company is set to hire 1,000 new employees. Those stories coming up at 10:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, Joan Jones in the newsroom. She'll be up in just a few moments with all the news. Mason is pushing all the blinky buttons, and then we're back. Then we're getting the newsroom handover. And there's a little ceremony that happens every day in our newsroom. You know, when he hands over from Joan Jones over to Ken Weaver, and that's happening now. I mean, there are flags, there are saluting. There's this whole oath of the newsroom that must be repeated. It's a very interesting thing that happens each day. So Ken Weaver will be up after Joan a little bit later with the news. I wanted to talk a little bit about the forecast and what we're up against. You know, it got down into the 20s last night. And we had severe storms that were coming through the area. We're looking for a high today of around 56. But overnight, tomorrow morning, 25. 25 degrees, which means that, you know, all the tinder plants that were sort of getting used to the 60 and 70 degree weather are going to be taking a hit. The high tomorrow, only 39. Then the overnight low going into Wednesday morning, 31, with a high of 57 on Wednesday. Then we sort of get back into, the upper 60s and low 70s. I mean, this is a heck of a deal. And boy, I'm looking at pictures in the Great Lakes area, Michigan, where they got 20-plus inches of snow. And that storm that came through here last night and knocked out power for some people is now pounding the East Coast, where they've got severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings up in that part of the world as well. So the weather is, this is typical springtime weather. If you don't like the weather in Middle Tennessee, just wait, a day or so. It'll change. In Tennessee, I like to bring everybody up to date on the latest news regarding Taylor Swift. It wasn't that long ago, Mason, where I remember seeing a story that said that Taylor Swift was worth $1 billion.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, and she made a lot of money on that world tour, and she makes a ton of money anyway. So worth $1 billion, and that was, I bet it wasn't 6 months ago that I read that story. I don't have an exact date on it, but it wasn't that long ago. Now listen to this, Mason.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. With her, they put a movie out of one of her concerts. She had her world tour, and she's put out multiple versions of the same album that have sold off the charts every time. I would absolutely believe that right now, if not almost double that.
Well, that's exactly where I was headed. Taylor Swift's new net worth, has hit a new milestone. Swift's net worth is now an estimated $2 billion, according to Forbes. Her net worth includes the nearly $800 million earned from royalties and touring, a music catalog worth around $600 million, and more than $100 million in properties throughout the United States. She is the first musician to reach the billionaire milestone through her songs and performances versus outside projects. So apparently some musicians have made money by, making investments outside of the music industry. Her first billion came through her songs and her performances. But pretty amazing. Taylor Swift, Tay-Tay, now probably worth more than any other musician on the planet. 30 minutes now past the hour of 10 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I'm Joan Jones with your top stories. Well, it is over. A barricade situation in East Nashville has ended. Fox 17's Justin McFarland saying that it all began about 5:30 this morning when someone fired on police who were responding to another call near the James Casey homes off Shelby Avenue near South 5th Street.
Now, police have several streets in that area closed for hours. Then, right around 8 o'clock, they say that the alleged gunman has surrendered and is now in custody. They say, thankfully, no one was hurt.
And it appeared that the roads in that area of Shelby Avenue reopened pretty quickly. Other news of the day, President Trump called for a coalition of nations to jump in and help with policing the Strait of Hormuz. Sounds like UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer got the message.
We have to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to ensure stability in the market. That is not a simple task.
President Trump warning that the NATO alliance faces a very bad future. Those are his words if members fail to come to Washington's aid. Renewable energy company Create Energy is expanding its Middle Tennessee footprint. It has acquired a new facility in Orlinda to function as its main production center, creating nearly 1,000 new jobs. Create Energy says it'll invest more than $76 million at the new Robertson County location. The current Sumner County location will serve as the Welcome Center and Research and Development Hub. That is the latest news. Your weather is up next. I'm Joan Jones, WTN News.
It is 37 minutes past the hour of 10 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in for Chris Hand. You're listening to The Chris Hand Show. He will return to his rightful position tomorrow. So be sure that you're here tomorrow when that happens. We'll try to muddle through, though, while we're bringing you news and information you can use. Still watching the loosely defined press conference scheduled for. Well, I say there's going to be a press conference at the White House, it appears, but all we're getting is soon. We don't know where, at that White House, soon could be, in the next 10 minutes. It might be sometime later today. We don't know. But when it happens, if it's on my watch, we will go to it and listen to what's on the president's mind, given that there's so much going on in the world around us. I'd like to talk a little bit about politics. Because, we got the midterm elections. You can never stop talking about that soon enough. We got presidential elections way on down the horizon. Never too soon to be talking about that. That's because, that's what we do. We talk politics. Democrats sink to a new voter low. Now, listen, if past is prologue, if the past is any indication of what will happen in the future, this midterm election probably will not be good for the party in power, and that's us. I mean, we got the Republicans in charge of the White House, the House, and the Senate. Midterm elections traditionally do not go well for the party in power. But the Democrats are really stinking up the joint, so let's see what that's all about. A new national poll, according to FoxNews.com, is the latest to indicate the Democrats are facing major problems with their party's image. Just 30% of registered voters in an NBC News poll view the Democrat Party positively. 52% view it negatively. The poll, the latest over the past year, indicates the Democratic Party brand is, in some cases, hitting historic lows, comes as Democrats aim to escape the political wilderness and win back the House or maybe the Senate majorities in the 2026 midterm elections. The GOP, working to defend its slim congressional majorities in the 2026 ballot box showdowns, amid a rough political climate that doesn't favor the party in power, doesn't fare much better in the polls, conducted February 27th through March 30th. Yeah, we both got problems. But the Democrat underwater ratings, 62% of Democrats questioned in the survey viewed their own party positively, compared to 77% of Republicans who gave the GOP a favorable rating. So we like our party better than they like theirs. A Fox News poll indicated a record 70% of voters disapproved of the job congressional Democrats are doing, but that is up 6 points since December, and 64% disapprove of what Republicans are doing in Congress. But those signs, honestly, are not good for the party out of power. A lot of people, and I talked about this earlier, I'll just do a brief hit on it again. A lot of people are really worried about gas prices and how that will impact the midterm elections. And what I would say to you, it's not good when gas in Nashville is $3.34 a gallon and diesel is $5.07 a gallon. That's the average. Nationally, it's $3.71 for a gallon of gas and just a hair under $5 for a gallon of diesel. That's not good, and that has an impact. But here's what I would say to you. Political memories are very short. And I expect that the Strait of Hormuz will get open, and whatever we're doing in Iran will be over in very short period of time. And when that happens, I think we will see the price of gasoline come down dramatically. I think that with other things that are in the big, bad, beautiful bill that got passed last year are just now starting to come into fruition, just starting to have an impact. Most notably, I think people are going to have a lot more money in their pocket once they finish their taxes, but we're just in that process now. By the time we get to June, by the time we get to July, I think everything that was in the big, beautiful bill will start to have an impact. And I think whatever we're doing with Iran will be over, and there will be a period of quiet prosperity from, let's say, June, mid-June, till the elections. And I think that will bode well, especially since we see these polls that suggest that, Democrats are not in very good shape with their own party. Are we going to have a good outcome in the midterm elections? I don't know that I can go that far just yet, but I see at least a pathway to having a good outcome then. And then when we get to beyond this, the question is, what's going to happen in the 2028 elections? I said this the other day, and I found another story that I think is pretty interesting. Everybody seems to think that the next person up, the person who, and the polls suggest that he would do well among Republicans, is Vice President J.D. Vance. But now some people are wondering, what about Marco Rubio? Some GOP donors plot shadow draft Rubio 2028 effort as his star rises, according to sources ABC News reporting. A year ago, the stage seemed set for Vice President J.D. Vance to succeed President Donald Trump as their heir apparent in 2028. Vance, just 40 years old at the time of the 2024 elections, came into office with a wave of support from Republicans and the backing of the president's family. And while the vice president remains well-positioned ahead of a likely 2028 campaign, questions are quietly emerging over Vance's inevitability, especially as Secretary of State Marco Rubio's profile and responsibilities have grown throughout the first year of Trump's record second term, mostly recently around the war with Iran. The long-term political implications of the war remain to be seen, but Rubio's rise has caught the eye of not only some of Trump's closest allies, but the president himself, who in private has been noting how popular and loved Rubio has become as part of the team. Multiple sources have told ABC News. People around the president have noted the lavish praise Trump heaps on Rubio, privately but also in public, often starting standing ovations for him, and declaring that Rubio will go down as the greatest Secretary of State in history. Yeah, look, I don't know whether or not the heir apparent is J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio, but I do know this. We got a bench, man. The Republicans and the conservative movement has a bench with a lot of talented people on it. People that, that could lead this country, who could pick up whatever Donald Trump, ends up laying for us and setting the table for us in his second term and run with it in a very productive way. Rubio, I like Marco Rubio. I think I've always been very impressed with him as an individual. I think he may be one of the smartest people in Washington. And he certainly has been a great Secretary of State. No doubt about that. So, but J.D. Vance, I can be happy there. I can be happy with Rubio. I can be happy with about 3 or 4 other people in that cabinet that Trump has put together. So it'll be interesting to see. But when I look at the other side of the equation, what do they got? Gavin Newsom? Kamala Harris? Are you kidding me? But I want to just throw up one caution flag about, what we've got going on our side of the equation. And that is all of the squawking that's going on among, people that I know and they're really, we're fighting among ourselves in a way that I don't think is very healthy at all. Here is Jim Vandehey of Axios talking about the interesting divide in MAGA. He made this apparent, these comments on Morning Joe, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think there's a valid point to be found in all of this.
I will say there's still this interesting divide in MAGA. Like at the MAGA leadership level, they are definitely breaking with Trump on Iran, the Epstein files, everything else. But the voters and the members of Congress are still with him, no matter what. It's almost like there's 3 types of Republicans now. There's kind of your establishment Republican, there's your Tucker Carlson MAGA, and then there's just Trumpians that whatever he believes, they believe.
Exactly. Well, that's interesting. But what I'm noticing is a lot of people, that I look to as pretty smart people are fighting with each other. I mean, if you've been watching social media, it's hard to, you gotta write it down to keep up with all of it. My friend Mark Levin, who I like a lot, is squabbling, it would seem, with Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. I know Tucker and I know Megyn. I worked alongside Megyn when I was at Fox News. I like her a lot. I've had some encounters with Tucker over the years, and I find him to be a good guy. But, I mean, boy, I'm telling you, the stuff that Tucker's talking about and the stuff that Megyn talking about is not sitting well with Mark Levin and vice versa. I mean, it's gotten downright ugly and personal between those three. Megyn is angry at Levin and Tucker, and Tucker's mad at Levin and Megyn Kelly. And Megyn Kelly's upset with Ben Shapiro. And, you've got, and vice versa, by the way. Ben Shapiro not happy with Megyn Kelly. Megyn, is not. And then you got Candace Owen out there, and I'm not sure where she is on all of this stuff. I don't agree with everything I'm hearing from my friends Tucker and my friend Megyn. And I certainly don't agree with some of the things I hear coming from Candace Owen. I tend to find myself in agreement most often with Mark Levin. But what was but is this, a party divided against itself cannot stand, is the old saying. And that's sort of the way I feel about this right now. With everybody fighting with everybody else and trying to slice up, we are fragmented in a way that, usually that's what the Democrats, what was the old saying about Democrats? I'm not a member of any organized party, I'm a Democrat. Well, I mean, it's getting to the point now where it feels like we're saying that about Republicans. I don't understand the fighting. Why don't we, put all of this aside, calm things down a little bit? I don't know that we are in a good place when we among ourselves are splitting the conservative movement into three different columns. And in the grand scheme of things, we are probably going to be better off if we can find some kind of truce to these continual arguments that are developing within our own ranks. I don't think it bodes well for us. And quite frankly, some of the stuff that some of my people I consider friends, I just can't find myself in agreement with them. And I don't think it's anybody's best interest for us to be divided. I think it's in our best interest for us to be united. And right now, it seems that what we have are certain elements within the conservative movement are squabbling not with our natural opponents on the world stage, the Democrats, but with each other. And I'm not sure it's a good thing. Again, I can't even keep up with who's mad at whom over what. But I know that kind of chaos does not bode well as you head into a midterm election. We ought to be a lot more united about the things that we can all agree upon. And it seems like we are not in that place at all right now. And on that front, I'll leave it at 52 minutes past the hour of 10 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, drivers in Jolton got some pothole work blocking the right lane, 24 westbound. That's going to be right there at the Harper Road overpass. Got some breaking news this morning. Vanderbilt University Medical Center says it has no access to patients' records because of an outage. We're going to give you the details on that coming up at 11 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Ken Weaver in the newsroom. The change of command in the newsroom has taken place.
Yes, sir.
There's a little ceremony. I was telling people there's a little ceremony. People don't know. When Joan Jones leaves and Ken comes in, they have this whole change of command ceremony that happens every morning. They're saluting their flags.
Yeah.
There's the official changing of the guard. And then Ken puts on that big fuzzy hat like the,
And I put on a big fuzzy beard.
That's right. Good to have you in the house, Ken.
You too, Brother Brian.
I tell you what, when I first came to Washington, D.C., and I didn't really know whether I was going to be here full time or not. One of the first things I was welcomed to was by Ken Weaver, who called me Brother Brian. I said, I don't know if I want to be a brother of somebody who was raised in Oklahoma, but we hit it off almost immediately, didn't we, Ken?
Absolutely, we did, man. We got the same music tastes and everything. So
yeah, which is of course excellent.
And then I'm telling you, man, when you invited us up and you cooked us some steaks, I said, oh, yeah, I'm going to like Brother Brian. Yes, sir. Brother Brian and the Cabana wife will make you some food.
That's right. We put on a spread when we put one on. There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. And then, I was lucky enough, he's no longer with the station. He's now, I just talked to him the other day. I talked to our friend Chris Weber.
Yes, sir.
Who was our producer. He's doing well. He's doing very well. He and his wife are now over in Georgia and doing very well. And just I'm gonna load up the motorhome and go visit them. I told him.
Yeah, you told me.
Don't be surprised. I'll just show up on your front doorstep and ask for a sandwich. Excuse me, can I have a sandwich?
And it better be a big one too.
Yeah, of course, and none of that peanut butter and jelly stuff. I'm talking about a sandwich.
We're talking about
a real sandwich. Yeah. Anyway, good to hear your voice today,
You too,
Ken.
brother. You too.
We got a lot more to talk about. One more hour to go here on the Chris Hand Show. Right now, though, we got to let Ken Weaver do that thing he does in the newsroom. Time for the news at 11 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Yes, there are some snow flurries out there, but nothing to be worried about. It's just this cold front that has come through. It's really cold up there in the atmosphere, so some of that rain that is falling is freezing on the way down in the form of snow flurries. So it's not going to be an all-out winter storm, thank goodness. But it is chilly, 37 degrees right now. The wind makes it feel like 30. Got the full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Got breaking news this morning. WSMV Channel 4 says Vanderbilt University Medical Center cannot access patient records due to an outage with the Epic system. This is a system that keeps medical records for providers across the nation. Medical providers have no access to any of their patients' records. Any provider that uses this Epic system, we're still working to get some details on the outage and when it might be fixed. Operation Epic Fury update.
He's demanding that European countries and China help to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, insisting they have a responsibility because they rely heavily on the oil from the Gulf.
It's the place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it.
The president said his administration has contacted 7 countries, but wouldn't specify which ones. In a social media post last weekend, he said he hoped China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others would participate, but so far, none of those countries have committed. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
Back here in Nashville, had a standoff in East Nashville that ended with an arrest this morning. Metro Police have that suspect in custody. After a 2-hour standoff in the Casey Homes neighborhood, officers say the man opened fire on them before barricading himself inside an apartment there near Shelby Avenue. No one was hurt. Negotiators eventually convinced the suspect to surrender, but the standoff caused traffic delays, including the closure of 24 westbound there at the Shelby Avenue exit. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
It is 5 minutes past the hour of 11 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson in for Chris Hand, who will return tomorrow, taking some time off. But everything's fine. He'll be back tomorrow. You won't miss a thing. I'm working here a lot for a guy who's semi-retired.
I was getting ready to say, man.
I mean, I just figured it out. If I fill in for everybody who has, when they take their vacation time, that's almost a full-time job.
Yes, it is.
Like a bad penny, man, I keep showing up. I really do. But glad that you're here with us today, and I'm glad to be here on this cold and blustery Monday, March 16th. You know, the old saying about March, Ken, is it comes in like a lion and out like a lamb.
Yes, sir.
But we hit the middle of the month and it just fell apart. I thought we were well on our way to lamb-like weather.
Yes.
But the lion reared its ugly head again.
Yeah, and Mother Nature apparently likes cold weather.
Yeah. So there were some power losses overnight with this storm that came through.
Yes, sir.
But it seems like that NES had enough people on hand, and I think there's still a few people out there who don't have power, but the vast majority of people who lost their power, pretty much it's back by now, right?
Yes. I'm not hearing anything about, massive outages out there. There may be a few lingering here and there, but for the most part, I think they're getting a handle on it. Like right now, NES only has 36 outages.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah, so that's good. At one point, last night. I think, we had in excess of 10,000 outages across the region, in Middle Tennessee, but I think a lot of the crews have been able to get a handle on it.
Okay, so here I got a question for you. This word right here. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Decimated. Decimated.
How many times have you heard people say, well, we have decimated what's going on with Iran? We've decimated their capabilities, right?
Every day.
And that's a wrong use of the word, is it not?
Yeah, because that means it is completely destroyed.
No, I mean, in my understanding, and I've been trying to find an actual...
Like an actual definition?
An actual definition. But as I recall it, I mean, the way I was always told it is decimated means that you took out 1/10 of somebody's capacity.
See, that makes sense.
Decimated.
Yes,
I took out 1 in 10 things. So a 10% obliteration would not be obliteration. It would mean you got, 1/10 of 10% of it. So you had 100 targets, it means you took out 10.
It's just the word sounds like it's massive.
It sounds like obliterated.
Yes.
Which is...
Well, here we go. The tornado decimated the town. So according to this definition, to decimate is to cause great destruction or reduce something significantly. How can it be two different things at the same time?
Let's see what it says here. I'm looking at this whole, what do they call it, the etymology of the word. The word decimate is what we might delicately refer to as a problem word. It seems to invite spleen, at least, I don't know what I'm trying to, but I can't find it where it said, 1 in 10, but it's the same thing. Apparently it comes from some connection of the word for tithing in another language, which is, give 10%, right?
Right. Yeah, to take a tenth.
I think it's one of those words, that people say, well, it's like my old thing when I say the horse is champing at the bit.
Right.
Champing is the correct word, not chomping.
Yes, it is.
But everybody uses chomping. And so at some point, because people use it wrong, it becomes right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here's how the modern meaning has evolved. By the 17th to 19th centuries, English speakers began using decimate more loosely to mean destroy or a large part of, or inflict great damage on, when actually the broader meaning is far more common than the literal kill 1 in 10.
There you go. Well, there you go. I'm backed up.
Now, I'm not using decimate anymore.
No, don't use decimate. Obliterate, destroyed. And,
that's
and
what
by
we
the
want
way,
to hear.
Here's another one. Totally destroyed.
Well, redundant?
It's redundant.
Yeah.
If it's destroyed, totally is completely redundant because it's destroyed means it's all gone.
Right. And in the broadcast world, that can cost you a whole half second.
That's right. Don't use the word totally destroyed. That's another one. Anyway, enough of that. President Trump says he's not ready to declare victory in Iran. President said late Sunday he's not ready to declare victory despite saying the U.S. has decimated the country militarily and economically. No, I'm not going to do that. No reason to. I just say they're decimated, and I think they've done damage to them. I don't know. Come on.
It's just it's a strong sounding word.
It is a strong sounding word. When asked by The Hill whether he's considering sending ground troops into Iran, he did not specify. On Saturday, Trump said the Truth Social posted that the U.S. has beaten Iran both militarily, economically, and in every other way. Trump launched what he refers to one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East, totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. The bombardment took place after Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, said last week that the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed as long as the conflict continues, triggering further fears of economic upheaval. Another story, I'll just read you some headlines here as we plow through some of this stuff. Trump says Iran ready to negotiate a ceasefire, but he's not ready to make a deal. The president said the terms aren't good enough yet to make a deal with Iran amid a widening war in the Middle East. This according to NBC News. From Axios, Trump eyes Hormuz coalition. Seizure of Iran's Karg Island oil hub. Working to assemble a coalition of countries to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and hope to announce it later this week, 4 sources tell Axios. And that may be what he has to say today, because the word we keep hearing is that the President of the United States has planned for a press conference this morning. Fox has been touting it. Got the little bug in the corner of the screen saying, stay tuned, it's happening soon. Been up for hours. Oil and gas prices, of course, are rising, and that's the thing he's very concerned about. From the Wall Street Journal, White House tries to build coalition on Iran to address energy crisis. Trump administration asking other countries to help escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, but a deal is not set yet. White House declined to comment on the expected announcement, which could shift depending on battlefield conditions. Trump told reporters Sunday that the administration has reached out to 7 nations for help policing the strait, but declined to say whether any had agreed to assist. CNBC, Trump weighing options to strike Iran's critical oil hub, UN Ambassador Waltz says. UN Ambassador to the UN Mike Waltz attends a United Nations Security Council meeting after the U.S. and Israel launched strikes on Iran at UN headquarters in New York on February 28th, 26th. Waltz says that President Donald Trump is weighing strikes on oil infrastructure on Karg Island, a key Iranian oil export hub. He says we're not going to take any options off the table, according to Waltz. Trump said on Friday he directed U.S. Central Command to carry out the bombing raid on Karg Island's military targets for the first time, but left the oil infrastructure intact. In other words, they left the oil tankers and all of that intact, but limited the capabilities, military capabilities of Karg Island, which is a strategically important island in the Strait of Hormuz. Part of the question is, who's really in charge? In other words, if you wanted to have a discussion about surrender inside, Iran, who would you turn to? Trump demands Iran's surrender and says he's hearing the new leader is not alive. How about that? There's a little bit more on that. And this story is pretty interesting with regarding to the new alleged leader of Iran. From CBS News, which is doing some interesting reporting these days, not at all like the CBS of old. U.S. intelligence shows Iran's late supreme leader was wary of his son taking power, sources say. This is pretty interesting stuff. Listen to this. U.S. intelligence has circulated to President Trump and to a small circle around him that Iran's late supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had misgivings about his son, who has now, of course, replaced him. Multiple sources have told CBS News. The analysis showed the elder Khamenei was wary of his son, that's the Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, ever taking power because he was perceived as not very bright. That's the wonderful thing. I mean, with our ability to monitor communications around the world, we know what they were saying to each other a lot of times. And apparently in some conversations, the elder Khamenei said of his son, he's just not very bright. Was viewed as unqualified to be leader according to sources. Now listen to this, and I'll explain what this is about a little bit later. The information gathered also indicated the father was aware that his son had issues in his personal life. According to sources within the administration, the intelligence community, and people close to the president. Mojtaba was selected to become Iran's supreme leader last weekend by the country's Council of Religious Clerics after serving as close aide to his father for years. Mojtaba was believed to have been injured in the strike that killed his father, and the question is he alive? Is he dead? Is he seriously injured? Or is he out there, but is he just a weak leader? Not very bright. Personal issues. He's got personal issues. Well, what is that? Okay, here we go. This is from the New York Post. President Trump was stunned to learn last week that U.S. intelligence indicates the new Iranian supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, may be gay, and that his father, the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, feared his suitability to rule the Islamic Republic for that reason, the Post can reveal. Trump couldn't contain his surprise and laughed out loud when he was briefed on the intel, according to sources. Others in the room found it hilarious and joined the president's reaction, while one senior intelligence official has not stopped laughing about it for days, said one person familiar with the briefing. The shocking claim was described to the Post by 2 intelligence community officials and a third close to the White House. All 3 sources say the implausible-sounding allegation is viewed as credible by U.S. spy agencies rather than false information intended to undermine Khamenei, age 56, who was selected to replace his dead father on March 8th. 2 of the sources indicated Mojtaba had earned the nickname the power behind the robes while serving as his aging dad's gatekeeper, has long had a long-term sexual relationship with a childhood tutor. The third source said the intelligence indicated the affair was with a person who formerly worked for the Khamenei family. Mojtaba, believed to have been wounded in the same February 28th airstrike that killed his father and other members of his family, has made aggressive sexual overtures to men caring for him, possibly while under the influence of heavy medication, one of the Post sources said. No photographic evidence, but sources insist the tip is solid. That one is saying it was derived from one of the most protected sources the government has. You know, we've got some good intelligence on that part of the world. We really do. And the Israelis apparently have exquisite intelligence inside Iran. The fact that it was elevated to the highest of levels show you that here's some confidence in it. You see, a lot of times the intelligence community will pick up on something and they will deem it not credible. It never even gets to the president's desk. And they're right when they say if it reaches the president's desk, it's because there is a belief that the information can be confirmed and is credible. Mojtaba's purported sexual orientation has been whispered about inside Iran since at least the May 24 helicopter crash that killed then-President Ibrahim Raisi, Ali Khamenei's presumed favorite to be the next supreme leader. Within the government, it's been pretty closely held piece of information, one insider said. Trump previously dismissed Mojtaba as a lightweight and an unacceptable choice to run Iran. The new supreme leader, widely considered to be someone who would not bend to U.S. demands to abandon the nuclear and ballistic missile program that prompted Operation Epic Fury. Some elements of Mojtaba's Khamenei sex life have been reported before, and that tends to lend credence to the allegation. Apparently, he was treated in the UK for impotence at some point, and that he is married late in life, around the age of 30. So there you have it. Do we now have the President of the United States? Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States speaking from the White House. Let's listen in to see if we can pick up a little bit of what's on his mind right now.
They won't be there for us. I've just known that for a long period of time, just like I knew about the Strait, that it would be a weapon, which I predicted a long time ago, predicted all of this stuff. You guys were very generous in that. I predicted all of it. I predicted Osama bin Laden would knock out the World Trade Center. I made that prediction a year before he did it. I said, you better get him. He's a bad guy. I watched him be interviewed one time, and I said, that's a bad guy. You better get him. 1 year before, exactly, I wrote it in a book. You can even check about a year before the World Trade Center then came down. President Clinton actually had a shot at him, and he didn't take it. Unfortunately, I'm not blaming him for that, but he didn't take it. And he ended up knocking down the World Trade Center, but I predicted that too. I predicted a lot of things. We strongly encourage other nations whose economies depend on the strait for blood. I mean, you know, these people literally need it. 95% of their energy or their oil comes out of the strait, and they should be in here very happily helping us. And it's incredible. We have such great, we're number one in oil by double now. We drill, baby, drill. We're double any other nation, and it's going to be soon triple any other nation, and that doesn't include Venezuela, who's been great. By the way, the relationship with Venezuela has been fantastic. Millions, literally millions of barrels of oil are being taken out, and it's been a great help, and it's been to their great benefit. The president has done a really good job. We get along with him really well, but we've taken out millions of barrels of oil and brought to Houston and other places for to the refineries. We have refineries set up specifically for that, and it's been a great relationship, and more and more is happening. It's a tremendous oil.
Well, we're going to monitor this. These things tend to be a little long-winded, so let's go on with the rest of our show. Do a commercial break. We'll do the weather and the traffic, and then we'll do the news, and then we'll come maybe back to this and see what's on Trump's mind. Right now, let's call it 24 minutes past the hour of 11 o'clock on Super Talk.
All right, Jolton drivers still got pothole work blocking the right lane, 24 westbound, right there at the Harper Road overpass. President Trump has announced a major health diagnosis in his administration. One of the leaders. We'll tell you about it at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
So I've been monitoring during the commercial break what the president has been talking about right now. You know, a presidential press conference can cover a lot of different territory. And he started out talking about Iran and what's going on and how we have destroyed their capabilities and this, that, and the other. And then he's off talking about the Kennedy Center, which, he's personally invested in doing something about the Kennedy Center, which he says has fallen on hard times and that needs to be completely rebuilt. And so he's talking about that. Have a feeling, since I see the Speaker of the House there, that perhaps they'll be talking about the Save America Act and what might happen. I don't know. It's a pretty interesting morning to be watching what's going on down at the White House, but we are monitoring it, and we'll keep you apprised of whatever is said as the president continues his long and rambling affair. A lot of things that he could be talking about. And so we'll keep a close ear on it and come back to it if we find that there is news being made. Right now, time for a look at what's going on with the news. Ken Weaver has the news from the newsroom at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. The National Weather Service Nashville is going to be sending teams out to see if there were actual tornadoes that did the damage last night in southern Middle Tennessee and other parts of Middle Tennessee today. We'll tell you more about what's to come in the forecast. We've got a cold snap we're dealing with right now. Full forecast in 5 minutes. Breaking news out of the Trump administration. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is being diagnosed with breast cancer. President Trump announcing it on Truth Social, saying she has a fantastic medical team and her prognosis is excellent, and says she will be continuing to work full-time at the White House during treatment. Operation Epic Fury update. Israel's military says they've taken out a majority of Iran's missile capabilities. We get more from ABC's Tom Sufi Burridge.
We got a sense from the IDF earlier about that air campaign. It definitely seems to be focused still on Iran's ability to fire back those missile launchers. The Israeli military insisting that they've taken out about 70% of Iran's missile launcher capabilities.
President Trump says he is demanding that European countries and China help to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, insisting they have a responsibility because they rely heavily on oil from the Gulf. And here in Middle Tennessee, a major clean energy company bringing more than 1,000 new jobs to Middle Tennessee. Create Energy expanding in the region with more than 1,000 new jobs across Robertson and Sumner counties. State officials say the company's investing more than $78 million in the project. A new 338,000 square foot facility in Orlando will serve as the main production center, creating more than 970 jobs. The company will also add 30 positions at its Portland site, which will become a welcome center and research hub. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
It is 35. Well, that's very pleasant. It's 35 minutes past the hour, 11 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson, your friend and radio buddy, in for Chris Hand, who returns tomorrow, taking one day off. And we have been monitoring the president. He's talking a lot today, apparently. Did a glancing blow about where things are in the Middle East, but he's been talking about his desire to rebuild the Kennedy Center and rebuild the East Wing of the White House. So you have a big ballroom, big, bad, beautiful ballroom, talking a lot about gold leaf and how he thinks that that's the way to go. So apparently both of these things will have a great deal of gold leaf. Man loves gold, doesn't he? He really does. All right, so while we're monitoring that, and if there are question and answers, maybe we'll dip back into it for a moment or two. But I think there's some other stuff that I want to get out into the open. The president has made it known in recent days that he believes that shortly after we resolve whatever is going to happen in Iran, that he will then turn his attention to Cuba. I mean, who had Cuba on their bingo card? I did not. But he is actually talking in a very positive way of late about how we might do something that we haven't had for 47 years, and that's better relations with Cuba. And something's going on. I don't know what it is, but Cubans are hurting right now because, when we went into Venezuela, we shut off the flow of gasoline and oil to Cuba, and they're hurting. They don't have any oil. There have been some protests in Cuba. And now comes this. You ready? Who would have ever thought this would happen? Cuba will allow nationals living abroad to invest in and own businesses on the island. The Cuban economic czar tells NBC News. Cuba is open to having a fluid commercial relationship with U.S. companies and also with Cubans residing in the United States and their descendants. Deputy Prime Minister Oscar Perez Oliva Fraga, that guy's got a lot of names, said in an interview in Havana. Cuban nationals living abroad in places such as Miami will be allowed to invest in the private sector and own businesses in their homeland, the country's economic czar has told NBC News. The Deputy Prime Minister said that a blockade by the United States is hampering these efforts, and the island grapples with an energy crisis, rare violent protests, and public pressures from the Trump administration. Cuba is open to having a fluid commercial relationship with U.S. companies and also with Cubans residing in the United States and their descendants. Wow, wouldn't that be something? I mean, right now, let's be honest about it, Cuba exists simply only because they are propped up by other nations, most notably the Russians. But the Russians sort of had, they're not the economic force they once were, if they ever were. They're certainly not the military force that they once were. I mean, we look at what the mighty Russian army has done in Ukraine, and you would think that if they were as good as everybody thought they were, they could have crushed Ukraine like a bug, but they haven't. Mostly because we've propped them up and given them a lot of good intelligence that has helped them stay in the game. But, it's real interesting that Russia can't support what they used to do on the world stage, and they're not there for Cuba. Venezuela not sending fuel to Cuba. We can finally, that island nation is not going to survive without a relationship from another powerful nation. Wouldn't it be something if Marco Rubio and Donald Trump were able to go into Cuba and resurrect a relationship with that country that we haven't had in 40-something, some odd years? Wouldn't that be great? It looks like it might happen. And when you read stories here that quote Cuban officials as saying, we'd be absolutely thrilled to have U.S. investment. We'd be absolutely thrilled to have people who left this country involved in this country once again. It sounds like something is up. Sounds like something is going on and is very much worthy of our time and attention. And let's see what else we got here. I want to talk, if I can, in the few moments that I have left before we take a break and talk to Chad Benson about what's on his show. I want to talk a little bit about this because gives you an idea of what you're in for in these midterm elections. Virginia now under control of the Democrats in a big way. And what happened? What was one of the first things that they wanted to do? To pass a bunch of gun legislation. Virginia firearms bill head to governor for decision. This is from justthenews.com. Legislative record shows several of the proposals that passed both chambers being signed by the House Speaker and the Senate President and now enrolled to before being sent to the governor for consideration, and Abigail Spanberger is expected to sign them. You ready? The list includes measures addressing public carrying of certain firearms, liability standards for the firearm industry, and restrictions on unserialized firearms. One of the measures, Senate Bill 727, would prohibit carrying certain loaded firearms, defined in the bill as assault firearms, in public areas such as street, roads, alleyways, sidewalks, public rights-of-way. Violations would be treated as a Class 1 misdemeanor. And inside the Commonwealth of Virginia, Republicans can't believe what the Democrats are doing. Here is Virginia Representative Tom Garrett.
Wondered if we were being pranked when I read the words in this bill. You see, this bill would prevent people in Virginia from carrying on any, quote, any public street, highway, alley, etc., on or about his person. So, Mr. Speaker, the presidential nominee that carried those localities was fond of Venn diagrams. In my district, we have these things, just for people in Nova, called pickup trucks. This is a circle representing people in the rest of Virginia who own pickup trucks. Now, this is a circle representing the people in the rest of Virginia who own pickup trucks who also own firearms. And I just want to add a circle representing the people in the rest of Virginia who own pickup trucks, firearms, and like to shoot recreationally or hunt, because you were so kind as to put a carve-out in there. That's this. Your Venn diagram is one circle. Now, I understand that this sort of virtue signaling might win you votes in Nova, but for those of us who live in the real world, which I like to call Rova, this is absolutely positively not something that can be enforced. We've literally created a criminal class out of millions, not hyperbolic, of Virginians, and defined as an assault weapon a single-shot break-action .410 shotgun or a bolt-action rifle with an integral magazine if the barrel's threaded, which enhances lethality exactly none. And while we pardon all kinds of people who are committing crimes and reduce sentences and give judges the discretion to do things like waive off your DUI offense where you might have killed my child had circumstances gone differently, we're creating criminals out of people who want to drive to their next door neighbor's farm in their pickup truck. If this bill passes, it will be challenged and it will fail and it will cost even more taxpayer dollars to try to defend this gobbledygook, Mr. Speaker. I would urge a no vote on this bill.
Gobbledygook, not gobbledygook, garbledygook. And then there's this. This is just, this is hard to believe. Virginia Democrats just voted to exempt themselves from that tyrannical gun control. The provision of this section of that bill that they're talking about shall not apply to any member of the General Assembly who leaves a handgun in an unattended motor vehicle. In other words, we're going to crack down on everybody in the Commonwealth of Virginia who wants to be a legitimate gun owner, unless they happen to be a member of the General Assembly in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Compare and contrast that with what's going on in Tennessee. Bill blocking landlords from banning tenants from keeping firearms in rentals heads to Governor Lee for signature. Tennessee State House on Monday passed legislation that will prohibit landlords from prohibiting renters from keeping firearms on their leased property, setting the stage for Governor Bill Lee to sign the bill into law. The Tennessee State Senate already passed an identical version last month. Will prohibit a landlord from banning tenants from carrying, transporting, or storing their legally owned firearms, gun components, or ammunition on leased property, including any vehicles stored on the property. In addition to the tenants, the legislation will cover their guests, provided that the guests are legal gun owners. Should a landlord or leaser violate the prohibition, the bill would grant the renter a civil claim to pursue in court. Thank goodness we haven't gone the way of Virginia in this state. Thank goodness we still have common sense. Thank goodness we still have conservative leadership in this state. Thank goodness I don't live in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Man, that place, I mean, the Democrats are in charge, and they're going to do everything they can in the short period of time while they still have control of the political bodies in that Commonwealth. And it's going to get ugly, and it's going to get worse. And I thank God that I don't live there anymore in the D.C. area. Listen, Chad Benson is coming up here in just a few minutes to talk about what's on tap for his show. And we will check in with Chad in just a short while. Right now, let's call it 47 minutes past the hour, 11 o'clock of Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is 53 minutes past the hour of 11 o'clock. Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson for Chris Hand. But coming up in just a few moments, we'll have the official handover, and Chad Benson will step up to the plate, and he'll be going all the way from noon till 3. And then, of course, Matt Murphy comes on after that. Hey, Chad, how are you? I see where the president is talking about a lot today about the Kennedy Center. Have you ever been to the Kennedy Center there in Washington?
Was so young way back in the day, so I don't even remember much of it, but I know that he's not happy with it because was it Rich Grinnell screwed it up apparently?
Yeah, he's saying that we got to get it fixed, and apparently that's his press conference this morning is mostly about fixing the Kennedy Center. I had one great Kennedy Center story, and that was when I was a local reporter for Fox 5 in Washington. During the sweeps, they always say, hey, what do you want to do for sweeps? You want to have a little something different to throw into there, try to get people to stick around during the ratings periods. And so I said, well, I'm fascinated that D.C. has a very, very good bluegrass scene, and I would like to do something on that. And so it turns out that it's coincided with the thing at the Kennedy Center on behalf of a local bluegrass group, been around there for a long time, group known as the Seldom Scene. And so I said, come on down because we're going to be doing a show on our 15th anniversary, and there are going to be some big names there. So I'm sad. I go for sound check, which, if you ever get a chance to go to sound check for a major show, that's where the most fun is. And you go and they're doing the sound check. Everybody comes in to, learn the acoustic, to work on the arrangement, to see what the sound is like, to work out any issues that might come for the performance later. I'm sitting there, front row, a bunch of guys sitting there in chairs, and Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt are singing a duet.
Oh.
Now, first of all, it doesn't get much better than that.
No.
And so my cameraman and I are just standing there with our mouths hanging open, that we're here in this very big, the big concert hall, and that Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt are singing. Basically, there are 5 people in the room, and I happen to be one of them. And then Emmylou goes backstage, and Linda Ronstadt comes down to where I was, walks right past me and my cameraman, says, hello, boys, how you doing? And then jumped into the arms of this hairy, greasy guy that I was sitting right next to, not paying a bit of attention to.
Did you
Big,
think
hairy, greasy guy.
Did you think to yourself, I could have got her?
No, I'm thinking, well, I could do better. What does she see in that guy? And so they'll go off arm in arm to go get, change for the show. And I turned to the guy who was there with me from the Seldom Scene and said, what does that guy got that I don't have? And he said, about $6 billion. That was George Lucas.
Oh, how'd that work out for you? Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah. He I can understand the attraction there.
Maybe.
But I'd have been probably more excited about meeting him than witnessing, but I never paid attention to him because I was watching Linda Ronstadt.
If Bell was there, he would have just sat there and stared at me. You're just the best. Same thing here with Mr. Star Wars right here. Mason's got Star Wars on his legs and his arms.
On my arm.
It's arms. It's on his eyes. It's in his soul. It's in his soul.
Yeah.
What was that?
It was cool.
Was it a dump back then? Because I know it's like one of those things. People, this, Brian. The White House it needs some sort of overall facelift. We can talk whether or not a lot of these things that we've had for a long time, they're not as elegant as we think.
Well, they may be cleaned up on the outside, but you go about an inch deep and you find that they haven't been maintained the way that they should be maintained. The president was just talking. I'm not sure what he's talking about at the White House or at the new Kennedy Center, which is undergoing renovation during his administration. But he said the air conditioning was 50 years old. So, you've got to keep up with this stuff, and everybody criticizes him, but, I think we do need to clean up some of these old buildings and some of these monuments and spiff up Washington a little bit. I don't think there's any harm in it.
No, absolutely. You can agree or disagree with how Trump's gone about the ballroom, but for years, the room where they held everything was just getting too small.
Yep.
They need to do something. And the Kennedy Center probably did need a lick of paint here and a lick of paint there, because a lot of these things are way older than you realize. And like you said, it's all about the facade looks great, but underneath it all, it's not as good as you think.
That's right. And in the White House, the one thing that I saw a lot of at the White House was the briefing room, And that is a junky place to be. Now they go through and they put in new carpet every so often and they paint the walls, but it's a very tiny space, and I remember having to sit in a booth about the size of maybe a small walk-in closet that I shared with 3 other souls there while covering the White House. And it was packed. It was elbow to elbow, not a lot of room. And one of my least favorite places to be was in the White House briefing room because it was such a crowded, unpleasant experience.
And way smaller than people realize.
Oh, yeah, well, it basically was once a pool area. So anyway, so go very quickly before time runs out. Tell me what you got on tap for your show
we'll probably
today.
talk a little bit about the storms, what we can expect in the next few days. We're going to talk a bit more about the vouchers, probably some stuff about Iran and what's going on over there. That's pretty much it. We got a packed day today of fun and frivolity. And let's not forget the Oscars. And how did I do my picks, having seen none of the movies but one?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is I don't actually get up and go to the movies much anymore.
No, I don't either. I don't either. Movies can come to me.
That's right. If I just wait a little while, it'll be right there on the Netflix. That's
Yes,
the way
indeed.
I look at it. All right, well, listen, Chad Benson, have a great show, my friend. Good to talk to you once again.
Thanks so much. Good talking to you, brother.
And that's it for me. Thank you much for being a part of the Chris Hand Show. Chris Hand will be back here tomorrow to continue, as he always does. And my thanks to the station for letting me fill in here. And it's always good to catch up with you. Seems like I'm spending a lot of time on the radio for a guy who's supposed to be retired. I guess that's the way it goes, but I'm not complaining. It's good to be in touch with you. See you soon. 59 minutes past the hour. Time for the newscast with Ken Weaver.